one of the biggest ways people prior to Keebo have been trying to reduce their infrastructure bill, their cloud data warehousing bill. Is like they go with consulting firms, right? They hire a
Right.
bunch of consultants, right? But then the incentives are not aligned because they get billed by the hour. So
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
the consulting agency to make more money, they have to make just enough progress for them not to get fired and prolong that process for as far as possible because
Yeah.
that's how they're making money. And whereas with Keebo, most of our customers start actually seeing ROI and saving within 24 hours. And we're not successful until and unless the customer is successful. The more we save them, the more money we make. So that's some of the ways where if you can figure it out in whatever business that you're doing, where you can align
Right.
your incentives and your end users' incentives, that's where things happen really, really quickly.
What happens when an AI company puts its money where its mouth is? This conversation with Keebo CEO Barzan Mozaffari explores how traditional enterprise AI approaches create a trust gap and why his company's radical approach of only charging for proven results is bridging that divide. This episode's called Busting Open the AI Adoption Gridlock. We only win when you win. Company rewrites the rules. We dive into Keebo's unique 30-minute deployment and payment for performance, showing how to eliminate traditional barriers to AI adoption. So let's start with why AI adoption is slow and the 4 key blocks to AI adoption in general.
We're really looking at AI adoption among enterprise specifically being sort of slow. And it seems to be lagging behind expectations. And as an interesting entrepreneur in this space, what's your read on that situation of why AI is, where resistance is happening, just from your experience?
Before I kind of give you the answer, I want to also like echo what you said. It is the AI adoption is this. It's disappointing that the rate of progress we're making in AI or machine learning as a field is far surpassing the rate at which we're seeing adoption out there in the world, right? So this was actually one of the main reasons I decided to start Keebo when I was in academia, because when you're not, when you're in your academic bubble, you solve interesting problems. You're moving the state of the art, like where the line is. It's just cutting edge technology, but you're not getting the adoption. And you try to, approach other companies. Hey, we have a really cool idea. Here's an important problem. Here's a solution. Oftentimes, like you realize it's a struggle. You can't really get something out into the world, even if it's not AI, while you're inside academia. So at some point, I just decided to jump in myself and kind of put my money where my mouth was, so to say, right? So how do we actually get this in the end user's hands? And then we did a very thorough analysis of what were some of the main objections, some of the main obstacles against adoption. So I would actually put them into 4 categories. You ask me what I think are the causes of a slower adoption. The first one is the implementation effort needed. The second one is the maintenance effort needed. The third one is the security and privacy concerns. And the fourth one, I would say, is the ROI, right? And then there's a fifth thing, which is kind of an all-encompassing thing, which I'll talk about, which is the bot factor. I'll talk about this in a second. But if you start from the top of this list, implementation effort, it means oftentimes you realize for you to be able to use a solution out there, you have to put in, like AI is it's a complete new beast to most enterprises. They've been doing their business, whether it's insurance or healthcare for, 2, 3, 4 decades, sometimes the exact same way. And suddenly they're hearing like, Gen AI, Chat GPT, LLMs, AI, and then you're expecting these execs will be doing something for the exact same way for the past 30 days to jump in and say, yeah, sign me up. And some of them are saying it, but then the bill adds up. Well, how do we know if this is going to work or not? There's an upfront investment, right? Like public companies, they have a quarterly goal, right? Like they're not going to go in there. It's so much harder. Some of them are actually putting what it takes. But if you think about it, oftentimes, there's a huge implementation risk. Meaning, I have to hire the right people, you know, take in a bunch of different vendors who claim the same thing, massage my own data, define POC success criteria, go through this entire process to implement it. And that's the first barrier. And after that, okay, let's say that we implement this solution. For us to be able to continue using it, what's the maintenance or the ongoing cost? So there's a there's a capex part of it, the initial investment I have to make in terms of hiring headcounts, training, changing the way I'm doing things, and setting things up. But then there's obviously an opex aspect to it, like what's the maintenance cost of this, the total cost of ownership, if I want to maintain this and make sure that the quality is there, et cetera, right? And then on top of this, with all these regulations and concerns, and rightly so, about security and privacy, now obviously the CIOs have to think about, you know what, you have your AI, you basically, how do I know that my customer, my end users' data is not going to end up in somewhere in your LLM helping another customer, something's not leaking out, creating a multi-million-dollar lawsuit, right? So the security, and then in general, like whenever you talk about AI, the biggest concern is like, what about security, what about privacy, what about fairness, ethics laws, all these kind of regulations and compliance requirements. And then if you get over that hurdle, now you have to start talking about dollars. Okay, I put in this amount of upfront investment. This is the maintenance investments. Here are the safeguards I have to put in, or additional investments I have to make sure that compliant with security, privacy, HIPAA, et cetera, kind of requirements. Where is the ROI? When will I be able to sort of say, here's, do I have anything, and when will I have something to show for? That, hey, I added all this cost, I distracted so many resources. We have a business that's been working for the past 3 decades now. As a new exec, I have to make some decisions. How do I know there's enough ROI? Right?
In an industry drowning in promises and pitches, one CEO is trying a radically different approach. Prove the value first, get paid later. Now, we explore why traditional AI implementation models are failing enterprises and how a performance-based pricing model is changing the game and making you think of maybe a different way of doing this. Think about AI. Many executives have this bias now against ROI. Is it even possible? How do we even use it?
In your Series A, I was looking about, average saving people 30 to 60% on their cloud warehousing. How do you get that into the ROI, for one? And secondly, I won't say believability, but they're seeing these other people, again, in the headlines, where ROI it's crazy, right? I mean, it's just off the charts. So how do you deal with that sort of bias that they must have?
That's actually that's a very good question. So I think there's a part of it, like coming from an engineering background, certain problems are really easy to solve. Right? So I'll talk about like how at Keebo, we're not facing an adoption barrier that a lot of other AI solutions face in the market, because of sort of taken on those 4 challenges. We've taken those 4 challenges head on, right? But there's a big problem, which is that bias thing, right? So a lot of times people, when we tell them how Keebo works and what Keebo does, the immediate reaction is, so many other people are talking about AI, right? I think that's the biggest challenge. I don't have a good solution for this, because there's so much noise out there in the market that people lose their sensitivity to the messaging. Because it's actually interesting. We attended this year's Snowflake Summit. I was just walking around looking at different vendors and booths. Like I don't think I came across a booth that did not have the word AI on this thing, on the back, right? So like, statistically speaking, it's pretty unlikely that every single vendor is using AI, right? But what happens in the market? So one of the other I would say, positive reasons for why adoption is so slow is because everyone's now touting AI, even the ones that have nothing to do with AI. So there's a company that they're doing a visualization. Like, where's AI? So, well, you can visualize it and then use AI, right? So I think careless marketing is muddying up the waters for the rest of us who are actually trying to move the field forward.
Bad marketing pitches do hurt more than just the businesses pitching them. They leave a whole glug of false promises. Those erode trust, and we all need to turn this around. Here's how Barzan's doing it.
We're trying to do and it's kind of troubling for someone who comes from academia, where this is the work of, we we have PhD students who work on these things, and we actually,
Right.
publish peer-reviewed, we have peer-reviewed publications, patents. The stuff actually works. It's actual AI. But when you're in a lineup with 20 other vendors who are pitching AI, I think that makes it harder, because then you have to tell people, you know what? I know everyone else is talking about AI, but this one is actually AI. I don't have a good answer for you. I think
None
that's
of us
if,
do.
if as a community we want to move forward, I think more of us should act responsibly and just say it for what it is, right? Like if we're doing something, because like there's many ways you can do amazing things, and we can
Right.
talk about this later as well. You don't need the latest LLM to deliver value to a customer. Sometimes a linear regression does a pretty good job, and we should
Right.
be okay with it. Just go and tell your prospects, your customers, I have a solution that solves your problem. Why do you care if I'm using AI or not? I think when we get, and I think we're going to get there as a
Right.
field, as a community, like as things mature, we're going to get there where buyers are not so hyped up with this, like this bot factor goes down. Things will go back to planet Earth, where people will say, you know what? Here's the problem I have. Here's the dimensions on which I'm going to evaluate your solution for. How you solve my problem is secondly. What I care about is what are the checks and balances I have in place to make sure that my implementation effort is low, maintenance effort is low, ROI is there, security, privacy concerns are addressed, right? So that's the part of your question I don't have a good answer for. I don't think it's an answer that comes from one vendor. I think as a community we need to mature and like have fewer like CEOs oversight, so that when there's a company that actually does AI, people know why and what is it that they do. But the way we actually have addressed those four risks, because aside from like the buzz and the noise that's the marketing noise that's getting created by um, over passionate marketers, if I can phrase it that way, I think we've addressed the other four risks. These are the things that we can manage as a
Enterprise AI adoption is hitting a wall, but not for the reasons most think. Here's why traditional approaches to AI deployment have created their own adoption crisis. And Barzan shares how his company discovered a way to break through, influenced by his academic background and understanding who else is pitching to the customers and getting them to think in maybe the wrong ways.
what Keebo does, just to give your audience a bit of background. We're basically, our mission is to empower data teams to take control of that growth through automation. So what we have a solution called data learning, where we learn from how users and applications interact with their data in the cloud, and then use that to automate and accelerate the tedious aspects of the interaction between the two, so the data teams can focus on growing their business instead of, oh, what are the queries I need to run? How do I optimize this? How do I spend less on this? How do I do, things that they don't necessarily need to do? So we automate the tedious aspects of the interaction. Now, to give you an example, we have a lot of Snowflake customers who are using Keebo's AI to actually reduce their monthly bill. They spend significantly less. And I think that's the article you were referring to. Like, we have customers
Right.
who are saving even 80% on their Snowflake bill. Customers who are saving 20%, 50%, 30%. And a lot of them are public companies where you can find on our website.
Yeah.
But how did we get them to adopt AI in an era where there's a lot of skepticism, a lot of concerns, a lot of barriers when it comes to adopting cutting edge AI? So we were very, we were very careful how we address each of those four concerns. So starting with the implementation risk. And these are things that a lot of times, if I were to sort of offer unsolicited advice to other entrepreneurs and companies in the space, is that if you come up with a solution and then try to address these four concerns, it might be too late. So the way that Keebo did it is that we started with, okay, these are our guiding principles in our design, and created a solution in a way that satisfies those four concerns. So from day one, we said, you know what, whatever solution we're going to develop, the entire onboarding implementation effort should be almost zero. The entire onboarding of Keebo should take no more than 30 minutes of one engineer's time. Because
Wow.
regardless of how busy your team is, 30 minutes is the time it takes for you to go grab a cup of coffee and come back. It's an investment that most companies can make. An upfront investment that's reasonable to ask someone. You grab someone on the street and say, you know what, there's a bunch of other logos who saved a lot of money, millions of dollars on their Snowflake bill. You can try it out. You don't need to go spend 3 months learning a new API, 3 more months implementing it, 3 more months migrating your data, 3 more months defining success criteria. All you need is 30 minutes of your time, and then you can onboard. So, I used to even make a joke in the early days of Keebo that if we take more than 30 minutes of your time, we'll send you an iPad for free. We never had to give away any iPads. But that's how we address the first part, right? And then when it came to maintenance, we designed the system to be not another crying child in the room. We want it to be a set it and forget it. It's very easy to create recommendation tools from a pure R&D perspective. You can bring a recommendation tool, an advisory tool to the market, orders of magnitude faster and easily than bringing in a fully autonomous car, right? So the analogy I give people is that the difference between how we approach this problem versus everyone else on the market is like the difference between a fully autonomous car and a GPS navigator. A fully autonomous car, you just say where you need to go and it moves, right? But that's a lot harder to build than giving someone a GPS where it says, you know what, you need to turn right at the intersection. But hey, if there's it says no right on red, it's your responsibility to not make a right. So, so we decided to go that route to make something that's fully autonomous. It's not something that constantly requires supervision, interaction with a human, because then it just becomes another project. The maintenance cost is high, right? So we addressed that way. And then when it came to security and privacy, our first app, which is the gateway for customers to sort of learn about our technology, adopt it, and see what AI can do for them, is our warehouse optimization app. And that app doesn't actually, not only doesn't store any customer data, it doesn't even need to see customer data. We actually train our AI purely on telemetry data. So that's one of the reasons, like, we have massive public companies using our platform without any security concerns, because if I don't even see your data, how can I be possibly breaching any security or privacy concerns? Like, you didn't even give me access, and we don't want access. In fact, most of the time you can really move the needle by just analyzing the metadata. That's how we did it there. But when it came to the ROI, which I think was the biggest accelerator for our growth, was that we came up with this pricing scheme when we said, you know what, we're a vendor, you're a customer, we should have slightly more confidence in our ability to deliver what we're saying than you do. Right? That's a reasonable expectation. Because that's a problem with a lot of vendors. They come to you, they promise certain things. And then one thing I always encourage people to do is to figure out if the vendor has more confidence in their claims, or they expect the customer to have more confidence in their ability to deliver. So with that mindset, we said, you know what, we're pretty confident we can save you money. So instead of getting you or requiring you or demanding that you commit to a certain payment, we're going to start optimizing. We're just going to take a percentage, let's say by default, 1/3 of whatever we save. If we save you $3 million, we take $1 million, you take $2 million. For every $3 we save you, take 2, we take 1, right? So that comes with an enhanced, intrinsic, guaranteed ROI that, putting all the other engineering resources that you're going to free up by leveraging AI just on your own infrastructure bill, on your Snowflake bill, you're guaranteed a minimum of 3x return, right? I think those are the ways where we've sort of been able to open doors that would otherwise be very hesitant to adopt AI in an enterprise.
When you're performance-based, which is a background I come from differently than engineering, but I've never really heard that, because that sort of makes it a mutual risk on performance-based.
Exactly. Aligns your incentive, right?
Right. And we all think about because otherwise it's that big bill coming at me, which is fine. But when you don't even not to be rude, but you don't even understand what you're buying, it's really nice to see 100%. When you be able to see that reality really, really quickly. That's wow.
That's exactly the thing. And I think you're spot on there. Like we, one of the biggest ways people prior to Keebo have been trying to reduce their infrastructure bill, their cloud bill, cloud data warehousing bill. Is they go with consulting firms, right? They hire a bunch of consultants, right? But then the incentives are not aligned because they get billed by the hour. So for the consulting agency to make more money, they have to make just enough progress for them not to get fired and prolong that process for as far as possible, because that's how they're making money. And whereas with Keebo, most of our customers start actually seeing ROI and saving within 24 hours. And we're not successful until and unless the customer is successful. The more we save them, the more money we make. So that's some of the ways where if you can figure it out in whatever business that you're doing, where you can align your incentives and your end users' incentives, that's where things happen really, really quickly.
You know, listening to this discussion is like listening to this masterclass of aligning incentives in the AI space. And I hadn't thought of it as much from the customer's perspective. What is their incentive? While competitors rely, again, on expensive consultants, lengthy implementations, trying to get cash flow so that they can actually do this very custom work in the early days, Barzan reveals how Keebo's approach of guaranteeing results within 24 hours, seeing something, is breaking down barriers to enterprise AI adoption for them, and why this model might apply to others in the industry. Because what Barzan's doing is so simple, you might just skip over and say that can only be done by Keebo. But what form of performance do you maybe have the opportunity to release? Because real lock-in isn't a lengthy contract and painful software integration. It's results, getting it going quickly, and the less they have to do with the AI, the better, as long as it's working the way it's supposed to and not hallucinating.
And it's funny, I was interviewing the CEO of Fathom, and he made a great point of speed as a feature. And his thing was being able to churn out meeting notes quicker, which they did. But your speed is like the speed of implementation. That's not even a reality to most people, right? I mean, everything is like this. I can see why enterprises wouldn't touch it, because it's such a brutal path that when you're at the end, it's when you find out if it works is a huge risk.
You're already deep into it. Like at this point, even if it doesn't work, you're better off telling your boss it did work, because at this point, a lot of times one of the questions I get is like, how did you guys come up with this way of doing things? And the honest truth is that it's like every success is based on a past failure, right? So, one of my previous startups, we had a product that was a fast solution for querying large volume of data. But then what we realized was that it was incredibly difficult to get adoption, even though it wasn't even AI, because let's say someone would go and implement Redshift or Snowflake or BigQuery. That was at least a 6-month project.
Right.
Maybe 6-month project of several engineers. And then you go in and say, I have a solution that's like 10% better than what you have, 20% better than you have. People are not gonna be like, you know what? Screw the last 9 months and the $500,000 I've already invested in trying this thing up. It doesn't happen, right? So to your point, like you gotta figure out, like, because there's inertia, right? There's basically a huge upfront cost. And that's where a lot of big enterprise solutions have been leveraging it. Is like, if the POC process is expensive and long enough, and you can actually get the customer to it, by the time they get to the finish line, they're more incentivized to make it successful at the vendor, because at this point, they've already poured, God knows, like 6 months, 9 months of engineering resources into it. So if you have the kind of leverage to get customers through this super painful, long POC process, sales cycle, more power to you. But the path we took was that there's a lot of people who are not willing to do this because they just did this with another vendor. So let's see how we can make it that time to value really short.
Man, it's that horrible lock-in because you've just gone down this path and you're all beaten up and nobody's happy using the tool. It's interesting because and of course we're early hype part of AI, which I think also has this idea as a sales point. I can see others selling complexity and disruption as I jokingly call it the techie two-step. You're too dumb to understand AI, which admittedly, right? No one's claiming they understand, even know what it means. And because it means so much, it's just become this code concept rather than like meaning. But you're coming in, and instead of telling them, what's so refreshing here for me is that it's not only the rewards and the incentive are aligned with the customers buying it, but it's so rare. And I know for one thing, if you perform, they'll stay with you forever. There is no other lock-in. The other is hours. Have you ever gotten to the point where they're sort of not believing that that will happen that quick? Like, because they've never seen it before or been sold that way?
That was actually one of our biggest obstacles early on. Like, there's certain types of obstacles, there's no easy way around it, because like the thing sounds, and actually we have a case study on this on our website where you can see the headline says it sounds too good to be true. The customer on day one said that sounds too good to be true. A week later, week into the free trial, they were like, "Where do I sign?" I think it does happen.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have a magic wand for how to overcome this, but sometimes when something's really good, people's immediate instinct or immediate reaction is that sounds too good to be true. And that's a big problem.
Sure.
Again, it comes to how we operate as a community, how we do our marketing. If everyone is kind of careless about how to do these things, how to sort of message a position they're offering, when someone actually happens to be doing what they claim, happens to be actually using AI, then you're essentially lost in the noise. So like, we were joking internally the other day with our marketing team that because everyone is talking about AI, maybe the only way for us to stand out is to tell people we're actually doing AI.
I'll put that up on there somewhere. Totally. Yeah.
The actual AI solution,
I guess maybe my meter for picking up hot air has been pretty much trained over the years. So I realize there's a 50-50 chance this person's either just selling me this because it's really good, or is there a there? Are they actually like able to execute? And that's interesting because that hype is undermining the trust that we need to earn. And as a community, that's why I'm like sort of hoping for the bubble burst, not like .com, but when that happened, the only people left were the people actually doing it.
They're actually doing it. That's exactly, I think, how this thing is all gonna end. And I think there's two aspects to it though.
Yeah.
Like in our case, it's kind of easy because we have no incentive to kind of lie to the customer, because if we can't deliver results, we're not gonna get paid. So like, the pricing model has removed the incentives for us to overhype anything, because like, we go in there, the customer tells us, "Hey, do you know if you're going to save 30% or 40% or 20%? The answer is we don't know. You're going to find out after 30 minutes of effort and within 24 hours. And if we don't deliver what we say, we don't get paid. So we don't have that kind of incentive. I'm not optimistic enough to say that, hey, every business will lend itself to this kind of pricing model, because it's just not how the world works. But I think what will happen, like you said, is when the dust settles, when the community matures a little more, people get more sophisticated about what AI does, what AI can do, and what it should do. And then everyone will just move on to the next boss thing. And then those who actually do AI and do well, because at the end of the day, you adopt a solution. If it doesn't work, it doesn't matter if they outed it to you as AI or not. You're going to move on, right? So a lot of the hype will die out.
No, so true. And it's funny when you were saying that, because they're trying sometimes in the worst case scenario in academia, there is that like such a big picture kind of level that they can, and it can do some really cool things. But then sometimes you have on the business end, it's almost like, would you like fries with that research? It's like a drive-through window.
Exactly.
And half the time they're trying to prove what they want to prove. They're actually not being anywhere
100%.
scientific, right? It's like crazy.
100%. No, absolutely. And it's funny. It's like sometimes like what catches as innovation, on the industry side is, almost funny. Like, basically there's a website where you can file your claim. They go and basically maybe they change the background color of the page. Maybe they shuffle some of the fields and they say, "Oh, that's a very innovative approach," which is fine, right? But like, that's the scale of what they call innovation, which would not really get too far in academia, right? So you kind of need a little bit of both. Like, need to be grounded in reality. Here's what we need to solve. Like, hey, let's have some out of the box, open-ended thinking, so that we can actually come up with solutions that are actually novel and move the needle.
No, and that's one of the real opportunities I see of AI, because it's really bringing together those three players have to play together and hopefully sort of interpollinate. I haven't seen it like this because the talent level needs to be so smart. I mean, really, and the money level is insane, almost to a point. I think it's of over pride, because it's like we can buy anything, which is okay. It's part of the game, the dance, but
Yeah.
it's like, you don't need that much, And even like looking at OpenAI, which wasn't reporting its compute costs. It's like, even I'm like, wow, now that's gutsy. But sort of if people want to follow up with you and go take advantage of Keebo, obviously go to Keebo.ai. Are there any other places you suggest that they can connect with you all?
I think that, I'm on LinkedIn, but also like Keebo.ai, Keebo.ai. There's a lot of resources out there, and we're putting out peer-reviewed publications, patents, white papers, know-how, so people who are interested in kind of getting involved. But yeah, definitely would love to get in touch if people want to learn more about how we've built what we've built, or if I can be helpful to anyone in their journey, in their entrepreneurial journey, bringing innovation to the market. Would love to be a resource.
I love it. An actual real innovation, not another innovation. I appreciate that. It's really, because it's the cool part. There's going to be some really amazing stuff. Thank you so much for spending the time. I've really enjoyed connecting with you and learning about what you're all doing.
Thank you so much, Declan.